I'm ready to rip somebody's freaking head off.
He's the most unprofessional little scaredy cat I've ever seen in my life.
Didn't mean to really turn around, meant to rally his cage up.
I beat your favorite driver.
And who would that be?
All of them.
This is Mario Andretti, and you are listening to Below the Yellow Line.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Below the Yellow Line. It is always great to talk to a driver who has seen, felt, and won in the NASCAR series. We have another one of those with us today. Brad Coleman. Brad, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm good, Samuel. Do I technically count as a NASCAR winner since ARCA is now a NASCAR series?
I would say yes. I would say absolutely.
Excellent.
I mean, and ARCA also in 2006, was much more respectful than it was or than it is now. So, I think that absolutely counts. You mentioned there you're an ARCA winner. Before that, though, I imagine you were in a race car, before you got a NASCAR National Series ride. So I ask every driver I have on the show this, what was your start in racing? When did you know that you wanted to do this as a career?
Man, when did I know that I wanted to do it? I loved watching racing from an early age, and it wasn't until I was 13 years old that I learned that you could actually race go-karts, and they weren't just something that you drove around in a big grass field for fun, just messing around, but you could actually get some serious ones and race. And, the Houston Grand Prix way back in the kart days was going on, and I'm from Houston, Texas, and they had the race going on. And I ended up meeting a guy named Price Cobb who used to race for Jaguar and Porsche and won the 24-hour Le Mans in 1990. Amazing road racer, and really hit it off with him. Went to the go-kart track, and he was like, "Man, you've actually got some skills. You need to race." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know I could. Sweet, let's do it." And traveled around with his Toyota Atlantic team for a bit and just got bit big time by the bug and raced go-karts. Then started racing Formula Renault open-wheel cars. And then started racing Pro Mazda series. Don't know what it's called now. I know it's gone. It's one of the Indy Next series. And then Porsche GT3 cars in Grand Am. I did Daytona prototypes in Grand Am, and then started doing late model stock cars and stock cars from there.
From there, like you mentioned, that bug ended up in Victory Lane at Kentucky in 2006, a track that treated you pretty well over the years. So, you're a winner in the ARCA Menard series, or I think the ARCA Remax series is what it used to be called, I think, when you won in 2006. Take us through that night, that win, and what that meant to you to be a winner in one of the top stock car racing series in America.
Oh, man, that was mega, because that whole year, I did 9 races that year, and I got 8 top 5s. My first race was in Nashville. I got second to Stephen Light. Yay. And then the next one was, I think, Salem, and I qualified pole, and I was just dominating and missed a shift on a restart and got wrecked. So wrecked myself out of that one. And that ended up being my one not top 5. Went to Kentucky, got second to Stephen Wallace. Went to Kansas, got second or third to Frank Kimmel, I think, because we didn't change tire. It just felt like it was never going to happen. And I was bound to just get top 5 after top 5. And that race, I mean, I think I had like a 6-second lead, 7-second lead with not that long to go. And then a caution came out at the wrong time, and we ended up almost 2 laps down, if not 2 laps down. I mean, it was bad. And got a lap back, got another one. And I think with probably 8 laps to go, I was in 7th or 8th. And they did not have the rules that they have on restarts now. It was single file restart. When that green flag dropped, the line checked up, and I went right and just went from like 8th place to 2nd place by turn 1. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually going to have a chance of winning this thing. And it was me and Frank Kimmel. I got by him. I'm coming to the frickin' checker, man, and the caution comes out. It wasn't the white flag ends the race rule. It was, you better cross the line or it's not over. And that caution came out as I was getting the checker flag, green, white checker. Frank Kimmel behind me, who was like 6 or 7-time champion at the time. He was like the man, and held him off, coming to the checker, caution again. It's like, come on, is this thing ever going to happen? And then that was the last restart. Came to the checker, man. I was so pumped. It was an incredible feeling. It was a ton of fun.
I'm sure it was to be so close for so long. You finally get it done, and like you mentioned, you beat Frank Kimmel, who I think ended as what a 9-10 time ARCA champion. Kind of good in the ARCA series for sure. You mentioned that one of those races you finished second to Stephen Light, and I certainly don't want to rub salt in the wound, but I was just watching this race. I think 2 or 3 days ago. I don't know why, but it was the Kentucky Busch Series race in 2007. Incredible atmosphere. Let me just say that for a Busch race in any year, but 2007, you got I don't know how many fans in there waving towels, going crazy, prime time on ESPN. But you drove a really good race that night. Unfortunately, a late battle with Scott Wimmer and Stephen Light doesn't go your way. You beat Scott Wimmer for second, but Stephen ends up riding away into the Kentucky night and getting the checkered flag. What were you going through there, those final 20 laps? Because you're leading on this restart, I think, with 16 to go. And then you got to fight off two of the best in the series at the time, including a former Cup guy and Scott Wimmer. What was going through your mind there? Kind of take us through that battle there from the driver's seat. What was Brad Coleman thinking in those closing laps?
Oh, man, it was shoot, I don't know if I took the lead with 40-something to go or 30-something to go, and the car was just insane. It felt so good. And I even said on the radio, I was like, guys, this car feels better than my ARCA car last year here. And the laps were taking forever. I mean, you think watching a NASCAR race is long, try leading it with the laps winding down. It is the longest thing ever. And caution came out. Scott Wimmer got under me going into one, and we were side by side for laps. I was on the outside and was able to hold him off and started pulling away. I think another caution came out. Same thing happened side by side. And then here comes Steven. He found the outside line, which it was pretty one groove all race, if I remember correctly. And I should have, I've never watched it. I won't watch it. Hurts too bad. Sometimes I close my eyes and I have to watch it. But watching it now, knowing what I know, I would yell at myself, dude, just stay on the high line because Steven's rolling around the outside. Scott couldn't pass you on the bottom. He wouldn't be able to, but he went to the outside, got me in 1 or 2 turns, and was gone. So, yeah, that was a big heartbreaker. I mean, it was also amazing at the same time. It was my first top 5 in the Busch Series. And my first race with Joe Gibbs Racing that year was in Mexico City, and I was running top 5, and something in the engine broke, and which ended our day, which was a huge bummer. I had gotten the top 10 at Talladega, I think, at that point. And yeah, that it was a top 5, and it felt great. I was like, yes, I freaking belong here, because didn't really know if I did up to that point, but that kind of sealed it for me.
I think you certainly proved to a lot of people that night that you did belong on a national stage and nearly taking that win. And you mentioned there you're driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. Clearly, if you're driving for Coach Gibbs, who's a Hall of Famer in both the NFL and certainly will be one day in NASCAR, when you're driving for him, people have taken notice of you. What was it like driving for a team like that with so much prestige, so many trophies every time you walk into the office? What was the culture like around Joe Gibbs Racing at a time? They're dominating in the Cup Series at that point. They've got Tony Stewart. They're about to bring in Kyle Busch. And then in the Busch Series, you have Hamlin, Logano, yourself, just a whole myriad of drivers that did a lot of great things in this sport. What was it like driving for one of the best teams in the history of NASCAR?
I mean, to be honest, I was starstruck the whole time. I mean, I'm racing with guys. I'm teammates with guys that I watched as a little kid and idolized. Tony Stewart. Bobby Labonte wasn't there. Who was in the? It was JJ Yaley was in the 18. Mm-hmm. I didn't idolize him growing up. I thought he was a good driver, but he wasn't old enough for that. Denny was new, but the team I raced late models with knew him really well from the Virginia late model days. So I was a huge fan of him. But I'll always remember my first big event. It was before the season even started. It was a sponsor event where all these high ups from all these companies, Home Depot, Interstate Batteries, we're all at this indoor go-karting track in Charlotte. And I'm there with the head people from Carino's Italian Grill, my sponsor. And it's a big endurance race just to have fun. So it's me teaming up with the CEO of Carino's, and then it's, Tony Stewart teaming up with the CEO of Home Depot. And they, you switch off mid-race. And I always remember I was like waiting for my guy to come in so I could jump in the car, and somebody just shoves me in the back. And I turn around like, what? And it's Tony Stewart standing there, and I just froze. And then he just laughed at me because he's like, yeah, you won't do anything. And he walked off. I'm like, wow, that was really cool.
I'd imagine, you would be starstruck. Was it weird walking into the office and, maybe seeing a picture of those guys on your wall? Because you mentioned you idolized guys like Tony Stewart growing up. Was it weird, being able to call a driver like him, a guy who would end up being a 3-time champion Hall of Famer, your colleague, say, yeah, I work with that guy. We're friends. We go out to lunch sometimes. We both drive race cars for the same team. He might be in Cup and you in the Busch Series, but still, how cool was it to call one of your childhood heroes, not just your childhood hero, but your colleague, your work buddy?
Yeah, it was a stretch calling him a colleague. That guy was on another level. He was supportive anytime there was help needed. But I mean, to be honest, I was so starstruck and just shy the whole time I was there. I never went to lunch with those guys. Like, looking back now as a grown man, I was 18 years old. I was just a kid. Really had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to drive a race car, and that was about it. Now as a 36-year-old dude with 2 kids who's lived some life, I'd be like, hey man, they're just people. Just, you have a great opportunity to just hang out with them. Why don't you pick their brain? But I was way too scared to do that, man. They were some big dogs.
I imagine I'd be a little scared too, but just a few, years, months later, you find yourself racing against them, not in the Busch Series, which, that era that you raced in was, known as the Buschwhacker era, where these Cup guys would run almost every single Busch Series race. But you're racing in the Cup Series in front of hundreds of thousands of people at the racetrack, in front of millions more watching on live television across the country. Take us through that Cup Series start at Michigan, a track which, by the way, is 2 miles long, incredibly daunting, a race kind of in the middle of the summer. I imagine it was a little hot there in Brooklyn, Michigan at that time. Take us through the mind of a driver getting ready to make not just a start in the Cup Series, but your first start in the Cup Series at a track that probably seemed like a monster to you at that time.
Oh, it absolutely was a monster. It was driving those COTs, those cars of tomorrow, back then with the wing on the back. Those things, you had to hang them out pretty far sideways. And our car was not working, man. It was not good. It did not like to hang out. If it hung out a little bit, it felt like it was going to wreck. And you're doing well over 200 miles an hour at that place, probably in the mid 180s in the corner. It is a fast track, and I qualified last back. I don't know what it's like now. I don't keep up with qualifying. I watch races sometimes, but you had to qualify to get into the race. I think now they have charters or something like that, but you had to get in, and the 96 car for Hall of Fame Racing at the time was not locked in. It was not top 35 in points. So I had to qualify it in, and I did. And that was my biggest goal. And then my second goal was to run as many laps as I could, do the whole race, and pass somebody. Unfortunately, I did not pass anybody, but I did almost do the whole race minus 1 or 2 laps. It was an incredible experience. I had done a lot of ride-arounds in the Busch Series and what turned into the Nationwide Series, riding in the truck, doing driver intros, but with almost all those same guys, because like you said, they all raced in the Busch Series when I was doing it. I mean, there was at least 15 every race. So I'd raced those guys before, but it just was a different level. I mean, it was just a different level of competition, and it was an eye-opening experience. I was pretty down on myself running so bad that race, and then I was supposed to do Bristol the next week. They pulled me out and they put Ken Schrader in, and then California was the race after that, which, as you know, very similar to Michigan, a little less banking, but 2 miles, super fast. They took the same car. And good old Ken Schrader, who's a veteran, did the same exact thing. He ran last. He didn't pass anybody, and I felt much better. But it was a very eye-opening experience.
I'm sure it would be, to go, even when you race some of those same guys, it's just different when they get in the car that's more that's more familiar to them, when, they're able to work with their crew chiefs and teams. And it's the NASCAR Cup Series. Like, there's just a different vibe to it, a different feeling, at the track, a different aura in the area whenever it's a Cup Series race opposed to a Busch Series or Truck Series race. These guys are the best of the best of the best. And I'm sure it was a great feeling for you to be out there. My last question for you here, Brad, you stepped away, I think, I want to say like 2010, 2011. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm mainly going off Racing Reference there, and they're usually pretty spot on with their stats there. But what was the decision to step away from racing, at least on a national stage, on a NASCAR stage? Like, what was that decision-making process like? And what have you been up to in racing since? And what do you maybe hope to accomplish on track, if anything, here in the future?
Woo! Tell you about half my life. All right, let's go. So, man, 2010 was my last season, and that was at Joe Gibbs racing the 18 in the Nationwide Series. It was me and Kyle Busch. We ended up winning the owner championship that year. That was the same year Kyle won like 15 races. So as much as I would love to take credit for that, I can take credit for not screwing it up. So I did not do that. That's good. But after 2010, had no sponsorship, sat out 2011, just looking for sponsors. As you know, and as people watching this will know, it takes a lot of money to go racing. And it's just at the point where if you don't have the money, you're not doing it. I even heard Joey Logano talking about how he can't do the Xfinity series because he doesn't have a sponsor, even him. So it's pretty crazy. But 2011, we midway through the season found a sponsor, and it was super exciting. I was like, all right, I'm going to get back in the car in 2012. Right before we're supposed to announce it, they pull the plug. They say they're not going to do it. And at that point, I had a couple hard years mentally of coming in, being young, going to Joe Gibbs Racing. For some reason, people thought I was like the next thing for a little bit, for a couple weeks there. And I was super pumped. I was like, okay, good. I'm good. This is what I'm going to do. I've made it. And then I went to the bigger curb racing, raced Kleenex, and the car wasn't as fast. And I didn't know how to handle that. And it was just a depressing thing for a young 19, 20-year-old to go through. And I'd been through a couple of years of that. And then when this sponsor fell through, I was like, man, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the fight in me. I don't have the passion anymore for it. So I'm just going to move on with my life. And a year before I called it, I had actually, traveling around with Nationwide, we'd go to different high schools and talk to teenagers, high schoolers about the dangers of distracted driving. And I actually fell in love with that. Like, I loved going and talking to kids, telling them the importance of driving safe. I had a big scare personally driving a streetcar, texting and driving, and I looked up and cars were stopped and I was doing 70 miles an hour. And I was lucky to avoid not killing anybody or myself. Never picked up the phone since. I was 20 years old, 19 or 20 years old. So very passionate about don't text and drive. So I took that passion, and talking with my dad, we had figured it'd be a good idea to talk to an old family friend of ours who owned a driving school, Safeway Driving, who ended up being a sponsor in 2010. And long story short, ended up buying Safeway and was there for a couple of years. Someone else bought it from us. And then 3 years ago, I ended up buying it back. And I am the sole owner now. I am running it. I'm loving it. And every day I'm teaching kids how important it is to drive safe and just get home to your family. And it's a lot of fun. I've got my Safeway suit there. I've got a Safeway helmet over there. It's fun being able to tie in the NASCAR thing. I've got 2 kids, which is crazy. I feel old, and I'm married. Yeah, I'm a normal dude.
Well, hey, if somebody comes up to you in the grocery store, and I don't know why they would, but they would say, hey, have you ever won a NASCAR race? Not many people in the supermarket can say yes to that. You can. So, you might just think you're a normal guy, and you may be like the rest of us, but hey, you got a trophy. Not most of us do. So that's a pretty cool accomplishment. And it's great what you're doing with distracted driving too, especially, in this day and age where we're stuck with these things, 24/7 all in our faces. Yeah. That's great what you're doing. Able to tie in the NASCAR aspect. It's pretty funny. There was an ARCA driver a couple years ago. It was one of the Gray brothers. I don't remember who, but that was he was doing an ARCA test at Daytona, and he's going 200 miles an hour down the Daytona super stretch, and he was filming a Snapchat while doing it. Got his phone like right up in front of his helmet. Maybe you need to go talk to him and talk to him about the dangers of Snapchatting and Daytonaing, because that probably wasn't a good idea. I think he got a good fine for it. But
I mean, honestly, I did for Hall of Fame Racing and for Joe Gibbs Racing, I was their test driver for a couple of years. So we'd go out to the Toyota Proving Grounds in Arizona, this big 10-mile oval with nothing around. And I pulled out my phone and I took pictures and I took selfies, and I'm doing 200 miles an hour. And it was stupid, but I did it. And it was, when you're a race car driver, I mean, you get used to the adrenaline. There's no adrenaline rush going 200 miles an hour on a 10-mile oval. So you pull out your phone, it starts to get interesting. So that's what I did. And yeah, I've been guilty of that too.
Well, I'll go tell Taylor Gray or Ted. I don't remember which Gray brother it was. I'll go tell them that they're not alone in that.
Yeah, they're definitely not.
A good story. But it is great what you're doing, for real, after racing, finding a purpose like that, finding something that still involves cars, just, not them flipping at Talladega, instead, being safe on the road, which, yes, it's very, I'm just going to look my camera in the eye, look the audience in the eye. It's important, stay safe on the road, whether you're driving to a racetrack or wherever you're going. You're not a race car driver, so slow down.
It's interesting how, I mean, being a race car driver, you learn a lot of skills. And one of them is how to read a situation going on around you and place yourself in the best place, and how to avoid wrecks to the best of your ability. And that really translates well to the street. I mean, I've been able to help develop curriculum for kids that really makes a difference. And I mean, I'll even get in the car with them, have an instructor brake on the right side and ride with a 15-year-old kid and teaching them how to drive. I mean, it's really cool. And it's a fun experience. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing other than probably like racing the 24 hours of Daytona or something like that. I would do that. Yeah.
So, I just want to follow up real quick. If an opportunity were to arise, if you were going to get a call from, somebody that had an opportunity, had a ride open, would you be open to running a race like the 24 hours of Daytona? Would you jump on that opportunity at the first chance you got?
100%. Yes. No doubt about it. I would be all in it. I mean, that's actually a goal of mine. I want to get back into the IMSA stuff. I did Grand Am back in the day. I want to do it. So it takes money. I'm working hard to see what I can find. So if you see me back one day, know I worked hard and I'm super pumped to be there.
Well, hey, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join our show today. Thank you for all you do promoting safe driving as well. Safe driving as well. Very important for all of us to be safe out there on the road. So thank you for joining the show. And goodness, I can't speak. We wish you the best of luck with your future ventures. Yeah,
Samuel, and if you're ever in Houston, free driving lesson in a driver's ed Safeway car on me. So.
Well, I'm probably too arrogant to admit it, but I think my parents would probably agree I need that. They probably wish there was an instructor break-in, in my car at some points when I was driving around when I was 15 years old. But certainly, thank you for joining the show. Thank you for all you do, and it'll be good to talk to you soon again.
Thanks, dude.